Welcome back to Philosophy for Flourishing, the podcast where we explore principles and practices for living the best, most fulfilled life possible. And if you've been listening to this show for any amount of time, then you already know that we at Objective Standard Institute are big fans of Praxis Institute. Praxis, I would call it a life prep program. So it's typically billed as sort of an alternative to college. I like to think of it as sort of a boot camp for independent value creators. So it's for the Benjamin Franklins, the Frederick Douglasses, the Andrew Carnegies, the people that realize that you don't really need some outside stamp of approval in order to go out into the world and to build a life for yourself and to create value. And the premise of Praxis is to teach young people to really milk this principle of personal empowerment to its fullest and to really orient self-starters to the world and the economy that they are entering. And so much of this mindset is really necessary and applicable to something that we are always talking about on this show, which is building an operating system for flourishing. So for baking into one's life these standing orders for finding and leveraging opportunities. And that's why I'm thrilled today to discuss opportunities and how to build a career for oneself with yet another Praxian, Praxis CEO Cameron Sorsby. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Cameron.
Thanks for having me, John. Super excited.
So we're going to talk about building a self-directed career today, one that you don't need to go out and get some credentials for. And I was hoping you could get us started by just sort of talking about your life and how you came to be leading the ship at Praxis.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a kid growing up, the way I look back at my own childhood, I was a pretty normal kid. I grew up, I did a combination of private and public school. I was naturally intellectually curious, I would say. But the more time that I spent in the classroom, the more frustrated I became with that classroom experience. And at the same time, I loved playing sports. So I was a big time soccer player, really competitive, kind of come from a family of amateur athletes that just love to play, grew up obsessing over Michael Jordan in the 90s and everything.
Love Jordan.
So I kind of had this, the big things I took away from growing up was I'd love to learn, but I never enjoyed it in a classroom environment. And school kind of killed my learning spirit to a degree. And at the same time, once I hit high school, really, I started thinking a lot about what I wanted to do with my life. Once my professional soccer dreams were diminished a little bit at 14, 15, it's okay, well, what else is there?
Nothing but soccer.
Yeah, exactly. That was definitely my mindset until 14, 15. And I struggled a lot with, my graduating class in high school, 99% of the students, you just go on to college. You don't really even think about that decision. And I remember looking back then, and I applied to probably 16, 17 different colleges because I was just entirely lost. I was I don't know why I'm going to college as the next thing I'm going to do as I, start that journey to adulthood, but I knew that I had to go, and it wasn't something I even questioned really. And it turns out that didn't set me up for success right away. I had this, big, that existential questioning and crisis around what do I do with my life? And when I got to college, it was more of the same with high school. And at some point, my mindset shifted probably halfway through my college experience, where I just told myself I'm not going to try to plan out the next 10 years of my life and like try to predict what I think my career is going to be for the next 10, 20, 30 years. And I'm just going to, one, approach college with the mindset of like, I'm just trying to get out of here as soon as possible. and in the meantime, I want to do everything I possibly can outside of that classroom environment to learn and grow and to explore my own interests. And, you know, I was very interested in politics from a young age. I probably didn't even know what philosophy was, other than this like thing that you associate with academics. Like you have philosophers that are in academia and they just like think about stuff all day, right?
Yeah.
When you're young, you kind of look at politics as like, oh, this is the world. This is the closest thing to the world of ideas. And I was interested in current events and stuff. And as I grew up, you know, that I kind of got exposed to libertarian political philosophy, objectivism, you know, some of those like old school free market thinkers like Bastiat and Mises and Hayek and such. And I kind of took this journey of, okay, I think I'm interested in the world of politics. Let me go volunteer for a political campaign.
Wow.
And I spent 2 weeks doing that. And I learned like, okay, I never want to be in the world of politics again.
Fair.
But I did get to meet a lot of people that were, you know, kind of like me. They were intellectually curious. What I loved about that 2-week experience was we stayed up till 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, just like discussing ideas and talking about different books we've read and, you know, getting recommendations from people that were much more well-read than I was and stuff. And it's like, all right, that kind of shifted my path towards like a more educational, I want to get involved in this world of ideas. I see like that's where things kind of influence culture and impact the world. Politics is like, you know, comes later in the process. And I kind of continued that journey. And I actually ended up interning the founder of Praxis, Isaac Morehouse, my senior year of school. And
interning at Praxis.
It was actually before. That was a year before Praxis was founded.
Okay.
And he was in the very, very early stages of the business idea. And as soon as I heard about it, I knew this is something like I needed to be involved in. It was a combination of, you know, my own interests and the like mission and what Praxis would end up being, you know, resonated with me deeply personally because of my own experience with school. And from that point on, I kind of took this approach of like, okay, like I need to create value as soon as possible for, you know, for this company that I really want to get involved in on a long-term basis. And the approach I took was I graduated school. I had a really exciting job lined up with FEE, based in Atlanta, Foundation for Economic Education. And in the meantime, I'd built a pretty good relationship with Isaac at that point, and I just wanted to help out with anything I could, and would help out with very little things here and there as he was just putting together like the program model and everything. And then once he launched the program, I was staying in touch with him, and I kind of realized like, hey, what the company needs more than anything is paying customers. You know, they need their first cohort of participants to go through the program. So here I was, a recent college grad. I had just moved to Atlanta for my like first career job that I was really excited about. And I also knew there was this other company over here just getting off the ground that I was really passionate about, and, you know, was a really nice combination of things that I cared about. And I just kind of took a leap to join the program, signed up as one of the first participants. And I was excited for the program. That was the first time in my life that I felt like I was voluntarily choosing to do a program, like an educational program that I was excited about. And I essentially treated it as like an entrepreneurial alternative to an MBA. I was a recent college grad, just starting the professional world. I knew that there was a lot I didn't know, and I thought this would be a good way to kind of push and challenge myself. So I joined the program, went through it, built a stronger relationship with Isaac and some of the very early team members, got to know the program inside out from the perspective of a participant going through it. And a few months after I finished the program, very early stages, I joined the team like as the fourth employee. And from that point on, it's kind of been Praxis all day, every day for the last 6-7 years over here.
Well, I love how Praxis seems to be sort of a farm for its own employees, because what company doesn't want self-starters that are motivated to go out and create value? And you guys are training people to do that. So you get to sort of pick from those that are interested, at least, in staying with Praxis, get to pick the best of the best to work there. So I love that.
Yeah. We use our own product per se.
Good way to put it.
It's super valuable talent pipeline for our hiring partners, and it's like sometimes we are our own hiring partner.
So talk more about that. Like what is the value of this? So you're creating, and we at OSI have hired Praxians in the past, both short-term and long-term, people that have gone through the programs. What are some of the things that you guys are teaching there that are helping people to kickstart careers regardless of whether or not they have other credentials?
Yeah. So whether someone does Praxis or not, like, I think there's important principles you can use as you get your career off the ground. And I think a lot of it comes back to, I think most people approach the start of their discovery process for their career not simply enough. They become overwhelmed, they're intimidated, they're stressed. They hear their entire lives that you need to go to college or you can't be successful. You're going to be stuck in a dead-end job, and you're going to be a failure in whatever way. And you just have to get that degree. Don't question it. Once you get your degree, magically you'll turn into a valuable candidate for companies. You'll have job offers coming out the yin yang for the rest of your life. You just got to get that degree. It's the golden ticket to life and everything. So that's the first thing. At Praxis, what I learned myself by going through the program, even though I already had a job lined up, I still had this stress over what am I going to do in my career long term. I'm coming out of school. I have a political science major. I had a mediocre GPA because I was doing things outside the classroom, paying honestly minimal attention to my actual schoolwork, because I've kind of figured out how to get involved in things I was actually interested in and thought was valuable for my own personal growth. And that's where I wanted to spend my time. But still, I had big question marks over how do I set myself up for long-term success as an individual young professional? And I think through the program, what I learned was that you can create opportunities for yourself, whether that means how you can best position yourself to land job opportunities at growing companies that you're excited about, or just realizing the process it takes to learn new skills based on your own career interests. And I think the biggest thing I would tell a young person today is don't from all sides, school, family. I think most people that are in more influential positions, mentorship positions with young people, they kind of endorse this almost bottom down approach of hey, you have to pick what your career is going to be for the next 20, 30 years. And that comes from a I think it comes from one, a scarcity mindset, and two, like your parents, teachers, etc. They're coming at it from like, I want to make sure you're secure and safe. You have a good paying job, you have healthcare benefits. Like their incentive is to make sure like you're going to be okay.
Well, if I could just add in one third thing there. So there's the whole challenge of selecting a major, right? Because when you're selecting your major, you're basically saying, this is the thing that I'm preparing to do for the rest of my life. So there's this huge pressure on you to select the right thing. And I love how Isaac talks about learning just in case knowledge.
Yeah.
So you go to college and you learn this stuff just in case you need it at some point down the road, instead of learning stuff just in time. And so this is another big stress point. I think you think you're funneling yourself toward one path and only one path for the rest of your life. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's great. I think that's huge. Like it's you have to pick a major. That's going to lead to like the first job opportunity out of college, which will lead to what your long-term career path is going to be. And that's just not how careers are naturally developed. Especially if you're, the ambitious, more curious type, like you're hardworking, you want to naturally explore what's out there. You're probably not going to be fulfilled by just one thing, especially if you're just like picking that one thing ahead of time before you even try it out.
Yeah.
And the approach we take at Praxis is the program really serves as that foundation for participants' career journeys. Like we're not trying to set them on one specific track through the program and get one specific type of job. The way we see it is that the ideal transition into like your professional life as you get started, it should include really valuable professional experience. Go inside a growing company, and whether you're doing sales, marketing, customer support, behind the scenes operations work, more technical aspects on the team, like just get in there and start trying stuff. And it's not about finding out if you are going to become a sales professional for the rest of your life or you're going to become a marketer. It's about learning how to work and learning how to create value. Yeah. And if you do that the right way, then the specific skills that you can learn those over time based on what you're actually interested in doing, based on how you can best create value, that, just in time approach, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I love the really inductive nature of how you guys set people up to create value in their lives. They're on the ground looking at facts, experiencing things, learning from that experience, and sort of, going through this sort of funnel process of figuring out what it is that they really enjoy doing. When, the opposite of that, the thing that we're so used to trying to do is looking at a course catalog or a college catalog, or going on the internet and reading, okay, this is what somebody in this career field does. And you just get this like one paragraph sort of glamorized idealization of what you could be doing if you went into this career field, when in fact, when you actually get into it, you've spent 4 years or 8 years or 10 years in school, and you get into it and you realize like the day-to-day work is just not that interesting. So, taking this first-handed approach, this evidence-based approach about what you really like, I think is just so undervalued, and it's baked into the college experience. So you talked about helping people to find and leverage opportunities, and I want to dig into this a little bit more. I'd love to know more specifically how you are helping people to see these opportunities, but also really curious about, you found Praxis and you found something that you were passionate about. But I've talked to a lot of people in that age range that really haven't figured that out. Like maybe they got stuck on the soccer, and the soccer was what they wanted to do, but it didn't really work out. And so they're not sure what's next. And I'm just curious, like, how do you talk to young people what sorts of principles and practices can people use to balance these two competing concerns, passion and opportunities?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, my own experience, like when I was late in high school, that's probably like late high school, early college, that's where I really felt that pain point. I felt completely lost and, had that typical, like pretty much every young person I talk to has gone through that same experience where it's like, I'm 18, I'm 22, I'm trying to figure out what I want to do, and I have no idea. I don't even know how to get that process started. Mm-hmm. For me, I was in that same boat, and I was going through like different job categories, career categories in my head. I was interested in political science and philosophy. So like naturally, I was like, maybe I should become a lawyer and go to law school, study the law. And there's that. I thought, as much as I hated school, I actually really enjoyed the actual skill and activity of teaching. So like as ironic as it is, like at different points, like I thought I would become a high school teacher and be like the person inside the system trying to do things differently, or even like a college professor. Yeah. But I just loved work. Like I was a kid growing up, like I was teaching my friends like different skills, or like I would be like not doing my homework in high school in math class, but then like helping my friend get through the class. And so I was just a nonconformist to my core in that way. But what I would tell people, if you're lost, you're like, okay, I want to find meaning in my work long term, but I don't I'm struggling to figure out what I'm actually passionate about. Number one thing I would tell that person is don't try to answer that question directly of like, what am I passionate about? Go start gaining experience any way you can. Whether like, if you think you're interested in like the business world, something more entrepreneurial, if you're 17, 18, younger, like go to a local business and see if you can get a job. I don't care. Like if you've never had work experience, go into customer service, go into food and bev, just do the foundation, like fundamental work of having to serve customers and be accountable to an employer. If you have a stronger like entrepreneurial spirit, like try to sell something online. Try to sell something in your neighborhood. Anything you can do to start gaining experience, do it. If you have more intellectual interests, start a podcast and, go through your own reading list and see if you can invite, the authors of the books that you're reading onto your podcast. When you're young, especially, you have that advantage of like more experienced people love to help young people out. They, even if it's not like, oh, I'm not going to go on your, like, even if it's not a huge podcast, they would love the idea if a 15, 16-year-old was like interested in their work and wanted to discuss it with them. That would make their week. You have all these, you start by that point, like, what are the things that you think you're interested in and how can you start gaining experience right away? And don't try to answer that big, like life-changing question all at once. Have the awareness that you are just starting a long-term discovery process for yourself. And that discovery process of like doing work that's meaningful, being involved in things that you're passionate about, surrounding yourself with like-minded people that you want to learn from, that's not going to happen overnight, but that's a much better way to approach it than being like, okay, I guess I have to come up with something because, I'm 18 and I'm supposed to pick a major and start my life now.
Yeah, I love that you're pointing out that the barriers to entry are much lower than a lot of people think. There's so much that you can do just with the internet. You could also just walk down the street and talk to some people and just start getting experience immediately. One of the things I've toyed with in the past was, perhaps I want to go into audiology and learn more about human hearing. And, before I planned to sort of commit anything to that, I had said, okay, well, first I need to intern or at least shadow at an organization and find out. Like, I'm not going to start filling out college applications and stuff until I have some evidence that this is actually something worthwhile. And, it turned out that just in conversations with a lot of different audiologists, I found out that they spend like 80% of their time just fitting hearing aids, and that didn't really appeal to me. So, these sorts of things aren't advertised in the career description. It's the real the boots on the ground stuff that you've got to figure out. One of the things that has helped me immensely, and I'm wondering what sort of focus, if any of you guys put on this, is learning how to give and take feedback from people. Because I've found that having mentors is only really helpful if you understand like how to leverage them.
Yeah. So it's, a big part of the program experience, especially as you go through the boot camp. Participants are essentially doing projects every week, and those projects are serving as like their time to explore different career paths, different skills, different role areas. But it's also like through the boot camp, we're replicating something closer to what it's actually like to be in an entry-level job inside a growing company where you have specific responsibilities, you're accountable, and you have to get your work done. And part of that process is that you're receiving feedback regularly, both from your like advisors that have a certain level of expertise that you don't yet in those areas, but also the peer-to-peer feedback is a huge feedback loop that we use during the program. So you're going through the program in a cohort of 15 other participants on a weekly basis. You're receiving feedback from other participants. You're giving feedback to them. And so I think that's just getting you very comfortable with receiving and giving feedback. And probably the biggest like hurdle participants have is they don't think they're qualified to give feedback in those situations. And it's a very school mindset, right? They're used to like, okay, I'm submitting something to a teacher, they're giving me a grade on it. But probably our participants learn more from giving feedback to one another than they do sometimes by actually like the project work they did on their own. So that's been a huge part. And then if you're put in the position where you're responsible for providing feedback to others, that's going to give you a lot more empathy on what it's like to receive feedback as well.
Absolutely.
And I think that's been a huge process. So I think subtly that prepares our participants to go into their jobs that they land through the program and have the mindset and soft skills that these companies like really are starving for, especially from like younger talent.
So, whether or not someone's going to go into Praxis, we've been talking about things they can do. There are all sorts of opportunities that they can leverage just right now. There's nothing holding you back from going in and finding somewhere to intern or setting up an online store and selling your product. But do you think, is there some sort of switch that gets flicked for some people when they go through Praxis? Are there people that come into Praxis and wouldn't really self-describe as a self-starter, and what in their mindset shifts as they go through the program?
Sorry, go finish that thought.
And is that something that you think people can replicate on their own, whether or not they have the money or the time or the bandwidth to go through Praxis?
Yeah, so I think those core like fundamental soft skills and intangibles, you either have them or you don't to a degree. And how we look at it with our applicants is like, okay, you don't need to be the strongest self-starter. You don't have to be at full capacity yet. You need to have some evidence that you have that in you. And if you just have that initial spark, and really it comes down to self-awareness of like, hey, I want to be the type of person that takes initiative, and I want to like take a more proactive approach to building my own career, because it's not just about getting a job through the program. It's about taking more control over your own life, essentially. I love the way you framed it in the intro. It's like a life prep program and life prep experience. And again, like whether you do Praxis or not, I think for somebody who wouldn't naturally describe themselves as a self-starter, I would tell that person, like, pick one thing and stick to it and do it every day for 30 days. If you think you're interested in writing, blog and ship that blog post one day, daily for 30 days. If, it can be as simple as like working out every day and just building a habit that you have full control over is a simple thing, but I think it's immensely powerful. And that actually comes back to like when I was in college, I mentally, like I felt that was probably the time in my life where I felt the least in control of my own life.
Yeah.
Because you're just kind of sitting and you're going through this 4-year process to get your life started, as opposed to approaching it like, no, like your life has started and it's up to you what you decide to do. And I think there's a lot of simple ways to get started in the right direction and kind of build that muscle of like, hey, I do want to be the type of person that takes initiative, that is able to like create and execute on my own projects, takes, more control over like your personal and professional development.
So you mentioned soft skills, and I'm wondering, do you think there are like, obviously the further into your career you get, the more specialized skills you need, but you can learn those as we've been talking about while you're on the job. But is there like a base level ticket to ride that you need in the realm of hard skills or more technical skills in today's economy?
I think, yes, the way I look at those is you need to have above average communication skills, both verbal and written. Yep. And if you can write well, then that means you can think at a higher level.
Absolutely.
And writing, just like writing as a hard skill, it doesn't matter what specific job you have, like you're going to use writing.
Oh yeah.
And so many young people, like they just have not been taught writing in any meaningful way. It's not helpful to just be trained in that schooled environment to write to a word count with an essay that has an intro paragraph, 3 body paragraphs, and a closing paragraph. And you're really just trained to put words on paper that you think sound good, but if anybody actually reads them, like it's hard to understand.
Boy, you are preaching to the choir. I love this. Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah, I think that's something like if young people are looking for specific hard skills, I wouldn't. That doesn't mean you have to like learn how to code and become like a technology professional. Like just learn how to write well. And I think the best way to learn how to write is to write as often as possible and to get your writing in front of an audience of some kind. That's how you're going to get feedback. And then other than that, I would say this kind of speaks to a soft skill and a hard skill. The soft skill is like being able to learn new things quickly and independently. So you just need to be the type of person that can figure things out on their own. You can Google, through the process of Googling how-tos, like you can pretty much learn any skill that comes to mind.
So as I was telling you before we hit record, I decided to build my own home recording studio. And, I literally did just about everything and had never done it before, including wiring for electricity. So, I mean, this is not something I would recommend. And so if you're listening to this, please don't decide to go do this. But Yeah, learning how to learn. I mean, is that something that can you teach people to learn how to learn?
Yeah, I think like that's pretty much baked into our program experience. And I think the most important aspect is, again, like honestly, when you really look at our boot camp, it's a 3-month process of deschooling yourself. And so like the projects that participants do every week, they're not like, there's a tangible reason for them because we want them coming out of the first 3 months of the program with a really strong body of work and a portfolio of projects that are relevant to the types of jobs that they end up, targeting and then landing. But the process of like, okay, I have to take a project from idea to execution every week for the next 12 weeks. That's like the key. It's baked into the process where it's like, okay, I don't know much at all about, content marketing. This week I have to come up with a specific content marketing strategy that I could execute to some degree for a company that I'm interested in. That's 97% learning how to learn in that process. Like, we're not just giving participants an assignment and then they replicate, what that assignment's supposed to be. And that's the big thing. Like, it gets you out of your comfort zone. And again, like everything we've talked about so far, like all this stuff can be replicated outside of like the program experience of Praxis. But just putting yourself in a position where it's like, okay, I'm going to create something tangible in a, definite period of time. And I have to figure out, how to create the thing that I want to build.
Yeah. So 2 things I just want to amplify there. What you said about writing is so true. I'm an editor. And so, like I said, you're just preaching to the choir on that. And I teach a class on how to write powerfully. And one of the points that I make is good writing is a sign of good thinking. And one of the great benefits of writing on a regular basis is that you become a better thinker. And it's just the most impactful general purpose skill. It's the thing that you use for everything that you do. It's the thing that jump-started the cognitive revolution that took mankind from being somewhere toward the bottom of the food chain to the top. And, there's Matt Mullenweg at WordPress, I think, learned pretty early on that they're doing everything remotely, email and messaging. And if you're this unclear communicator that causes this sort of frustrating ping pong of messages back and forth without really answering questions, you just totally cut into the bottom line of WordPress. And so they don't hire people that aren't clear communicators. And so I just want to amplify that. Absolutely, you've got to be a good communicator, and it's not rocket science. I mean, this is something that you can learn, and you can learn by practicing. And go ahead.
I think most people are intimidated by writing because, like you said, like writing represents your thinking, and it can be a intimidating process to like share your own thoughts essentially. But I think most people build up like, what does it mean to be a good writer? They think about, who is the most deep, complex thinker. And I love, just that term, like your goal shouldn't be to like become the most impressive writer. Your goal should be to be a clear communicator.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's this writer and teacher of writers, William Zinsser, who has this great line where he says something to the effect of, when people sit down to commit an act of literature, the person who appears on the page is far stiffer than the person who sat down to write. The idea being like, you're not sitting down to commit an act of literature. And if you approach it with that sort of mindset, you're going to totally come out you're going to stultify your whole thought process on that. And then I totally lost what my second point was. Sorry. We've covered so many bases here and so much good material. What else? What have I forgotten to ask you that you want to talk about today?
Yeah, I mean, I would just throw one more thing out there for kind of young professionals, people that are just getting started in the world and everything. And this is probably the ultimate like underlying theme to what makes Praxis participants successful through the program and beyond. And again, like I think this is in stark contrast to the typical college experience, but what matters more than anything, like you can have, we've had participants come in with minimal experience, minimal skills, very, very raw talent. And we've had extremely polished participants start the program with like overqualifications for Praxis essentially. And what has made the difference, it doesn't matter where you start, it's the mindset more than anything. Like if you have a growth mindset and if you're an optimistic person, and by optimistic I mean like you understand that you have control over your own life and over your own destiny, that's the most important thing. If you feel like your outcomes are out of your own hands, then you're not going to do the things that you want to do. And then a side effect of that is that if you are that optimistic person, you're enjoyable to be around. Other people Absolutely. Enjoy working with you. Other people will go out of their way to help you make progress on your own goals. We have the participants like they just attract the other participants. They almost naturally see them as leaders and people to kind of live up to some degree. So that's what I would tell people. And that was the biggest difference for me personally. Like when I was in school, I was probably at my least optimistic within my own life. And then as soon as I felt like I escaped from college when I graduated, and just getting out into the real world, it was very empowering just to like realize like, okay, I am in control of my life from here on out.
Yeah, you remind me of, Say's law. We were talking earlier about old school free market thinkers, J.B. Say, of course, being one of those. And supply equals demand. I mean, if you were a curious person, people are going to be curious about you. If you're an interested person, people are going to be interested in you. So absolutely, I think you have to bring that interest to the table. I was recently speaking to Blake Scholl, the founder and CEO of Boom Supersonic, and he talked about the necessity of picking something that you are excited about, because if you are excited about it and you can get other people excited about it, then the world is just going to conspire to pull these great things out of you. And I'm sure we'll be seeing lots of great things, both from you guys over at Praxis and from all the great people that are going through the program.
Absolutely. And then, John, one last thing to mention for the audience is we have a special offer for all Objective Standard followers. We're doing a $1,000 scholarship offer for any followers of OSI that apply and are accepted for 2021 Praxis cohorts. And they can go to discoverpraxis.com/OSI to receive that offer. Discoverpraxis.com/OSI, and we'll make sure to put that in the show notes. And then for anyone who's interested in just learning more about you and seeing what you're up to, where can people follow you? Yeah, Instagram and Twitter are kind of where I'm most prevalent these days. And my handle on both Instagram and Twitter is just @Cameron Sorsby.
Easy enough, @Cameron Sorsby. Great. Well, we'll put that in the show notes as well. Thanks again, Cameron, for coming on the show. Such a pleasure talking to you guys at Praxis. If you're enjoying Philosophy for Flourishing, if this is helping you build an operating system for living a better, more fulfilled life, I hope you will support us by giving us a 5-star review. It's really small, but it makes a big difference. And until next time, keep living your life and flourishing. Thanks for tuning in.